So let's now watch our application when it runs and see how the heap size changes over time. We'll need to run it with a larger heap size so that we can keep it running long enough to be able to monitor it. So I think I'm going to set this to run with a heap size of, let's go for 80 megabytes this time. So we'll change our run configuration and say run it with a heap size. Actually, I think 50 should be enough. Let's run it with 50. And as soon as I've clicked on run, I want to go back into JVisual VM and connect to Customer Harness, which you can see has opened here. And I'm just going to close down the other tabs, go to monitor, and we'll remove everything that isn't heap, and we'll have a look at this graph and see what happens over time. Now, the first thing you can see very clearly is that we are getting decreases in the amount of heap space being used. So clearly the garbage collector process is running. It is running much more frequently than it was when we were running with Eclipse. And if we leave this running, and in fact I'll pause the camera and let this run off camera for a moment or two. Okay, well this has been running for about a minute, I think maybe. And one thing we'll notice just looking at the console here for our application is that the amount of new customers being generated now every 5 seconds is really very small. In the last iteration there were only about 50. In this one, okay, it was about 70. But compare that to up here when it was generating thousands of customers every 5 seconds. If we go back to JVisual VM, well, this graph now is very striking. What we can see is that the amount of memory our application is using has actually plateaued. It's reached a level and it seems to have stopped there. What's happened at this point is that the garbage collector has been desperately looking for memory. It's looking for space to be able to create new objects in, but it really just can't find any. And if we left this running for a little bit longer, eventually our application would crash. Now, although it hasn't crashed as yet, as we saw, it has slowed down significantly. I'm not going to, I don't think, leave it running long enough to see the crash, as we did see that earlier when we ran with a smaller heap. But what we can see now is that clearly this is not a well-behaved application. We've used up all of the available memory, and the only thing we can do now is to restart it. Actually, I'm saying we've used up all the available memory. As you can see, the available memory that we set was 50 megabytes, and it looks like in this instance that it's just under 40 that's being used. It tells me if I hover over this line, yes, it's just under 40 that's being used. There's about 8 megabytes that just can't be used. And actually, we'll find out why that's the case, why some of this memory can't be used to allocate new objects in the next chapter. We'll come back to this point a little later on.